I had a hobby too. Mine happened to be guns and ballistics, and I studied guns and ballistics as much as I could, and I wrote an article about high velocity.
So out of all my years working at Weatherby, the last 5 have been some of the most exciting. Working with Adam, with him running the company.
And to think that I get the opportunity of carrying on my grandfather's legacy 75 years later here in Sheridan, Wyoming, I mean, it really is a dream come true.
Oh, I'm home. Thank God I'm home.
On Our Mark, the Weatherby Podcast.
All right, welcome back to On Our Mark, the Weatherby Podcast. I've got a really special guest today. I was surprised recently that one of my friends from Alaska, if you have listened to our podcast on our first caribou hunt with Deadhorse Outfitters, they run a really cool transporter service. Hook was our captain. We talked about Captain Hook a little bit in the podcast, and now we have Hook on the podcast. Welcome, Hook.
Welcome. Yeah, thank you very much. So, we were driving, come down the lower 48, drove down from Fairbanks mid-February. Had some places to go down here and happened to be over in South Dakota on the way to Idaho, and had Jeremy text Luke and say, hey, you free? And so we like to just show up at random times, and I'd been wanting to come by here for a long time.
Well, I'm glad that you made the time to do it, and we just did a little tour, showed you the facility a little bit, and what'd you think?
Oh, this is an amazing facility. If anybody knows anything about guns, you should absolutely come here and take a look at what Weatherby does. I've shot a Weatherby. This would be the 26th year.
Awesome. That
I've shot a Weatherby 300 mag, and to see how they're actually produced and put together and the new things that have come out in that time, just in the production side is just phenomenal. Seeing tools that you could only dream of 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's fun. We're having fun. Well, I appreciate you saying that. We don't do public tours typically. You got some special treatment.
No, I appreciate it. I think it's an amazing facility, and like I said, what you guys do, and the specialization within the rounds. I have a lot of people ask me, what do you hunt with in Alaska? And I said I've hunted with 300 Weatherby, and I have about 1,545 guns. That's
I think I misheard you.
Yeah. I have 1,545 guns. I've never sold a gun. I have a bad habit.
Yeah, I'd say so.
It's expensive. So I've shot.
It's a good bad habit.
It really is. And so what it comes down to is when people sit there and say, oh, well, what do you shoot a moose with? Well, the reality is you kill a moose with a 22 if you really wanted to. That's not not the issue. But when it comes to knockdown power, I've only ever had one animal not fall immediately up on a hit with my 300 Win Mag, and that was a brown bear that I shot his heart out.
Win or Weatherby Mag?
Weatherby Mag.
Yeah.
Yep, 300 Weatherby Mag, and I shot his heart out, and he ran about a quarter mile away, spun around. And then came back at us, and at about 250 yards, I broke his left shoulder.
Yeah.
They run just as well on 3 as they do 4.
Sometimes better.
Yeah, and then he eventually fell I'd probably say about 70 yards. He finally fell. So he was without heart and lungs for the better part of 4 minutes. And he's the only one that I haven't just had fall.
I think there's something to just like an animal that has willpower, because I've seen a number same scenario where it's like there's no reason that shouldn't be dead, right? And he's just running on willpower at this point. Yeah,
it really is just the brain is working and
just stubborn. I haven't admitted to myself yet that I'm dying.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, but yeah, I was never familiar with Weatherby. how my rifle came about was I had a dry cabin, and there was an arsonist that burned it down, and I lost everything I owned.
In Fairbanks, or
Yep,
okay.
outside of Fairbanks there. And so the first, I'd probably say my first real large caliber rifle was it was a Seiko 308 Forester Ranger Edition that I picked up in Colorado Springs when I was probably 10.
Yeah.
Iron sights, shot it forever. Of course, it burned. All my stuff burned. And so the way insurance works is it's like, kind, and quality. And so my dad went out and he thought he got something that was comparable to that in that realm, and it just happened to be a Weatherby N300 Weatherby mag.
Yeah.
And
that became the go-to.
It did. That gun has spent one day of its life inside. Even in the wintertime, I keep it in a Copeland case outside on the four-wheeler. Because it's so cold up north, if you have a gun and you go back and forth between inside and outside, you'll have frost acquire on your firing pin.
Sure.
And so I guess it was just always available, and it spent about 4 days underwater in a boat once. Brought it out.
My goodness.
Yeah, sprayed it with some WD-40, hunted for like another 10 days, finally took it apart, did a good cleaning on it. Even when we're at camp, I got bipods for it, and I just leave it outside. I don't bring it in the tent.
Yep. I mean, most people know, like, if you're, say you're truck hunting, whatever that looks like, but you take a gun from inside, it's cold outside, you can put it in the truck even, and it starts to sweat a little bit. It's not good.
Yeah, but even then you would think, like with the amount of abuse I've given it, you don't spend 21 days in the rain on a blued gun and expect it to be okay. And I don't have any issues.
Yeah, I feel like that's lucky.
Well, yeah,
we make a good product, but
you do.
You're hard on stuff, man.
I am. So
I think Alaska's hard on things too.
Alaska is definitely a proving ground if you want to test gear or different ammunitions and things like that. You have such a variety of animals. The largest deer in the world with the moose. The biggest brown bears in the world are on Kodiak. And we have small, obviously like long range shots. Like you can be dealing with wolves that start out, 800 yards a lot of the time. A lot of predatory stuff up there as well. And then between, caribou. A big caribou is probably a really big one's probably 400 pounds. Typically, anywhere from 250 to 300, and then dressed out at like 125. And you're talking about an animal that has somewhat hollow bones. They're not heavy boned.
They like field dressing a caribou. Well, more than that, just getting all the meat off. I felt like they were more, for lack of a better term, fragile than I would have expected.
Yeah, they're interesting. They obviously, you've walked on tundra, so their bodies are just adapted to
stupid.
Yeah, run and jog on tundra. You're just like they walk at 15 miles an hour, and you're like humping along at 1, and you're just like,
if you're lucky.
Yeah, we don't chase caribou whatsoever, and so, but you shoot around at a caribou with bones like that, you're likely to go through it without the bullet ever expanding. Mm-hmm. So you kind of have to be cognitive in the state when you go hunt specific animals. There's no real one universal round or one universal caliber per se. But I've had 25 years of success with one. I literally just...
That's pretty awesome.
I like shooting other guns, but...
that you could get a new one.
I'm thinking about it, yeah. I'm really hot and bothered over the 338. And
338 RPM.
The 338 RPM, yeah. and especially with the
it's an awesome Alaska cartridge.
Yes, and with the stocks that you have now,
those Peak 44 stocks.
I'm still running the old poly.
Yeah, well, you need to get one of the lightweight new carbon fiber stock guns in 338 RPM. We need to get you set up in a backcountry.
Yeah,
2.0. That's probably the ticket for you.
Well, so when you put out that first podcast, people, we have our gear listing, and people always say, well, what do you do? And I'm probably not one that's good as as an example, I'm an old wool and PVC guy, right?
You're a different kind of guy in a good way.
Yeah. But I told the SEER team that I took up a year later and a Navy SEAL team that I took out for training
Yeah.
that they needed to watch your podcast and duplicate your gear. I'd never seen somebody show up with so light
Oh,
of a
yeah.
gear.
Well, so if you didn't listen to our first podcast, we were not planning to go with you.
Right.
We showed up to Alaska. Mac, our camera guy, his camera equipment didn't come. So it was still in Seattle. So we had to kill, I forget, 6 or 8 hours. We go to Sportsman's Warehouse, meet one of your friends, James.
James, yep.
Shout out to James. And James is like, what are you doing here? And we're like, well, we're going to go caribou hunting off the Hall Road. He's like, how are you going to do it? And we kind of explained to him, we're going in super light. We're going to hike to the 5 mile line. And then we're going to try to get on this river system and kill some caribou and then pack raft out with the pack rafts we have on our back. So we were going super light because we were planning to go in on our own power and then raft out. James is like, that's stupid.
Yeah.
You need to call my buddy Hook. He'll take you up. And we're like, man, we've been planning this trip for a year. We're good. Appreciate your input, but we're all right.
Yeah.
And but he planted the seed.
Yep.
And we had some. We were in Sportsman's Warehouse. We're just kind of killing time, and we started. The four of us that were on the trip, we started talking. And we're like, I wonder what. Who's this Hook dude? And like, is he's just chilling up there? Like, how's this going to work out? And we started talking about it, and he told us about Deadhorse Outfitters. And so one of the guys like gets on his phone, he starts looking it up. He's like, no, this is like a real thing. It's not just like some dude.
Right.
And so we called Jeremy, your business partner. He's in the lower 48, right?
Right, yeah. So he's in Virginia right now. He's a command sergeant major. And until he is released from the military, he's kind of stuck down here.
Right.
Yeah.
But so it's interesting because where you transport, there's no cell service. Mm-mm. And so it's not like we could just call you. So we called Jeremy, and he's like, yeah, Hook will take you up. Here's his inReach number. And we're like, okay, this has just got a little more complicated. And it's probably normal for you Alaskan people, but like here you just, like, let's just call the guy and figure out where we're going to go. And it was all of our first times to Alaska.
Okay, yeah.
And your inReach message is like, we're just past pump station 2. We're like, what?
Where's pump station 2?
What does that even mean? And so we like talked to Jeremy. I think we inReached you, and we're like, hey, are we really about to throw away a year's worth of planning, this whole trip, to have Hook take us in an airboat 20-something miles instead of 5? We're like, well, that sounds better. Plus, we don't have to walk 5 miles in the tundra. That sounds better. And then on the way out, we can pack raft out 20 miles instead of 5, and then not have to walk 5 miles up a road to the car. That also sounds better.
Right, yeah, just a little bit better each way.
And so, yeah, we were like, let's do it. So we ended up meeting up with you somewhere after pump station 2,
Yep.
and which became much more obvious once we did it. And I think when we got there, you were like swapping the prop or adjusting something on your airboat.
I was adjusting the pitch and the props.
Yeah.
I wasn't happy. They run on a torque to a horsepower ratio, and it just wasn't quite right. And so we were fiddling with it a little bit there. And
we live in Wyoming. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's an airboat in Wyoming. There might be, but if there are, there's not many.
No. And our airboats, like even down here, they're not the same kind of airboat. Most people think of an airboat like Florida airboat.
Yeah, going looking for some gators.
Right, and so we play around in like we run 1/4-inch aluminum instead of 1/8, and we use UHMV bottoms so that we can drive over.
It's like a plastic.
Yeah, so it's PTEX. It's cutting board material. Is
okay.
What it is.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
Yep, and so we run on dry ground. I can go down the parking lot. I can go wherever your car.
Which
can
we
go.
did with you, and I like you cut like a gravel bar.
Yep.
And I'm like bracing myself, thinking we're about to get like shook, and it was like the smoothest part.
Yep.
Just whoosh, it was super easy.
Yep,
It's like,
just-
oh man, this is crazy.
Yep, and that's why we run airboats. The river goes up and down so much. Guys attempt to run even jets. That always ends poorly. It's fun for them to watch their foot fly off.
The river up there off the Hall Road is not like the rivers we have here. The Sag's huge.
Yeah, and the Sag in itself, and then the Ivashak and the tributaries that feed
Yeah.
it. Like what you were saying earlier, everything is bigger in Alaska. I can't remember. I think it was we have 1 million lakes and 500,000 rivers.
Nuts.
The Yukon averages a half a mile wide, 60 feet deep,
That's a lot of water.
and cooks along at 20 knots.
That's a lot of water.
Yep, and it never stops. It'll have a 10-foot duck of ice.
It's hard to fathom.
Yeah. And when you drove over it,
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
The bridge that goes over it. It's weird because it's like a wood. The part you drive on is wood. The support's not, but it's like this is weird.
yep,
It's a big bridge.
it's a big bridge. And so, we have deep rivers, we have big rivers, wide rivers, but a lot of what we deal with is obviously glacial fed rivers.
Right.
And so as those glaciers melted and moved, you have what's called glacial till, lots of gravel.
Yeah.
And because the water can go up, so, it can snow in July up there, and you get snowpack, and then you get a 55-degree day, well, the water will come up 3-4 feet. And that's great for running a boat. But after that 4-day period, all of a sudden you run out of water again.
Yeah.
And that's where airboats come in.
I remember you're doing like your safety speech. I think you were just about finished making fun of us for the lack of gear that we had. You're like, "Where's the rest?" And we're like, "No, this is it."
Yeah.
You're like, "I've never seen anybody take so little gear." And we're like, "Well, we got here in different circumstances. We weren't planning to go with you." And then you start your safety spiel, and you're like, "Yeah, anybody that has ever run an airboat, if you haven't crashed one, you're doing it wrong." And we're like, "I don't know if this is the best safety speech."
Right. No, it's a true, it's a true statement. If you haven't sunk an airboat, you probably haven't been anywhere even remotely exciting where an airboat could go.
Right.
Airboats run entirely on power. The only way to steer is if that prop's spinning.
Kind of like trying to turn a jet ski where you can't turn unless you're under throttle.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you lose thrust, they're the equivalency of a bathtub. They'll get water. Your wake likes to catch you from behind, and that's pretty much the end of your story. They feel like a bathtub. They're not a Coast Guard rated boat. They were never meant to be, so they don't have to have that internal flotation.
Right.
And so they sink quick.
It's more of a powered ski, less of a boat.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to put it. It's like it's an airplane without wings and wheels.
So I'd never been in the airboat, and I'm like, I don't really know what to expect. We get everything loaded, secured, and you start handing out Ear Pro. Like, it's going to be loud, and then I think there's some radios incorporated into the Ear Pro.
Yep.
And we're like, all right, hold on, and throttle down, and you took us upriver and dropped us off, and then we're like, well, we're here.
Yeah, and so when you guys showed up and you started bringing out your gear, I think I called BS because you said you had 4 rafts.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, exactly.
And I am used to NRS rafts.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, there's no way. And I think I'd ask you. I make the comment. I'm like, how much gear do you have weight wise? And I think cumulatively you had 100 pounds between 4 guys.
Yeah, it's maybe slightly more than that, but yeah, probably not much more.
Right, and I'm just like, I had made the comment 100 pounds per piece. You're like, no, like 100 pounds total, and I was like, no, there's no way.
That's not possible.
That's not possible, and so.
Yeah, I'm not kidding. We planned this trip for a year, and like gear selections were made purposefully to make sure that we were light, and we didn't know what we were doing. We're backcountry hunters in the lower 48, but that doesn't translate all the way to Alaska.
No.
I think we actually had a good time. We stayed dry. Everything was awesome. We killed caribou, and I would go in with the same gear list. It was awesome.
Yeah.
To going for full circle to what you're telling the.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You guys did phenomenal, and you got really lucky on the way out. We had that rare day where we had those 1,000 head of caribou just barrel through camp.
That was so cool.
Yeah,
we got to pack raft first of all past some muskox like coming off the river, and we have a pretty epic shot of us 3 rafts. The 4th raft was our camera guy. He got out, took a picture of us rafting past, kayaking past these muskox with 4 or 3 deadhead caribou on the front of the pack rafts, and we're like, it's pretty epic. And then we got to finish 20 miles later into a big herd, the herd of caribou.
Yeah, just
they're everywhere. It was awesome.
Yeah, that was an awesome day.
The experience of that trip, still to this day, I think was my singular favorite hunting experience. And I mean, to get to float, take the airboat, the adventure of it. I like to say, my kids make fun of me, but I always tell them it's not an adventure until something goes wrong.
Right.
The adventure of the whole trip from Max camera gear not coming to calling the audible and going with you, man, it was super fun. So we made friends. We went again the next year with the guys from Hush.
Yep.
They came back with you again a 3rd year this past season.
Yep.
I couldn't make it. I went to Kyrgyzstan.
Understandable.
But that was a good trade. I still love the experience of Alaska, I think, more, but I had done the caribou trip twice in a year. I'm coming back, though.
Yeah, no, definitely. And we've got some new spots. We've gone way farther up the Ivashak than we had when you guys first came. So we're right on the border of Anwar now. So 60, 70 miles upriver.
I want to raft out that.
You do.
That'd be like a multi-day situation to get out. Because it took us a full half day to go 22 miles.
Yeah, and going up the Ivashak, like you're in bigger country.
Yeah,
we're not flat anymore. We've definitely got.
You got some contour more. They're rollers, I think, where we were, but.
Yeah, so you're up to your 3 miles to get to the top of the hill, and it's still just the hill.
Yeah.
And some different. It's just much bigger scenery. I call it the Rhode Island Bowl because it's a bowl encased, and it's the size of Rhode Island that you're hunting in.
Okay, everything's bigger.
Yeah, but it's beautiful up there, and so the progression of the boats and kind of just more familiarity with the different types of year and the water has allowed me to get farther and farther and farther. And Anwar's my cutoff. I'm not allowed to boat into Anwar. That's federal ground.
Sure.
So we have a total of 150 river miles.
Anwar is the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's the size of West Virginia. And so if you ever watch The Lost Alaskans, that is where they live. And so I think there's seven permanent residents.
7. The lucky 7.
Yeah.
Crazy 7, maybe.
Well, you know where you were. So the North Slope Borough.
Yeah.
We have boroughs, not counties. The North Slope Borough is the size of Texas, and there are only 11,000 people that live in 3 villages.
That's pretty wild.
Yep. But it's also where the oil field is in the North Slope Borough there along the Arctic coast, Prudhoe Bay.
Yep.
And so non-residents, there's probably 20,000.
Yeah. I mean, there's a full-on airport up there.
There's 2, actually. So there's that one, and there's one out in Alpine as well.
Yeah.
As you go farther west. And so, it's its own animal. It's its own city. It does what it does.
It's a weird city.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not, it's what we got the Napa store with
Yeah. We got a pizza.
So, the pizza. So Chandler was so bitter because the pizza lady left.
Oh, she did?
She did. She, her daughter's in Europe, and she left.
No.
And, all the homemade pizza.
It was, we didn't know what to expect. We did not have high hopes, but the pizza was good.
Yeah, no, she makes phenomenal pizza. And so, we didn't have pizza this year.
That's a bummer.
It was a bummer.
So, there's 2 things. First of all, how did you find yourself running hunters up in an airboat? How did Hook get to there?
So Hook got there. So 1997, I permanently moved to Alaska.
From
From Colorado.
Okay.
I'm 18. I knew I was going to live there my whole life. I used to spend the summers, part of the summers, up commercial fishing out of Homer. I permanently moved up there. I was going to school. And fall comes, and I love to hunt, and I got a job with a guide.
Okay.
And so I did some assistant guiding first couple of years, and then continued on with that. But I would only do it in the fall. I was more of a caribou moose guy. I didn't really. I hunted spring bear on my own. You know, I didn't guide anybody for spring bear or anything like that. And then I lost my hand a year later, and I kind of changed professions. I've got.
That's why you're known as Hook.
Yep. Yeah. Well, sometimes if I take it off, I don't know what you call me. So I changed gears, and I finished out school with a degree in diesel mechanics and welding, and then I ended up teaching at the university for a year.
Okay.
Welding and diesel, and then I went in the operating engineers as a heavy duty mechanic and a welder, and I spent the next decade basically working myself to death. And the only time I would take off was about 5 weeks there in August and September, and I would go guide. And I did that for about 19 years, and I had a guide partner, Brad Russell, and we would take fairly high-end clientele as we were trying to build his side of the business up.
Okay.
And I got to a point where some of those high-end clientele, I'm a DIY guy. I really like DIY.
Sure.
And if I'm going to guide you, I expect you to work. And some of the higher-end clientele
they don't want to work.
They don't, a lot of waiting on hands and feet. And I kind of got jaded and burned out, and so I stopped. And I had a couple gold mines, and so I'd retired out of the operating engineers. I'd maxed my hours out under the plan I was under. And then I moved forward to, I ran 2 of my gold mines for a couple years, and then just didn't want to do it. But I ended up taking a job in Fairbanks with Fairbanks Natural Gas at the time as a directional driller. And then in 2016, I tore my right shoulder completely out of its socket, and the whole
Sounds pleasant.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Jeremy was stationed there for 6 years at Fort Wainwright, and we got to know each other. Our kids were kind of doing the same thing, and we had talked about starting a business when he retired from the Army.
Yep.
So he leaves in 2016, and I don't really have a direction I'm going. And that following spring, I said, "Hey, we're gonna do this." And he's like, I'm not out of the Army. And I was like, yeah,
that's okay.
We'll make it work. So we kind of lit a match. And that first year we did a test run there in 17. I think we had 5 clients that booked just on a whim.
You just made a website?
No, that was all off of Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't have a website yet. We were in the process of, but we hadn't launched it. And then the next year, so we had the website up, and Jeremy had gone to a Texas show. Because he was stationed out of San Antonio at the time. And then we had, I think, 45 people the next year. And then we did a couple more shows up in Portland and Denver. And then I did the REMF. Jeremy sits, he sat on the board at the time in Texas for the REMF.
Okay.
Huge supporters of them. And then we got invited to go to Las Vegas.
For the
yep.
Hunter Christmas.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was fun time. And so we went on up to like 90, and then I set kind of a limit for the number of camps I was willing to do and the number of people that I was willing to put on the river. And we've maxed that out now. And so that is kind of the evolution of how we got there. It was really just on a whim. I said, look, I don't have anything to do right now. I'm not going back to mechanicking or drilling, or I don't want heavy industry stuff anymore. And I didn't really want to guide. Yeah. I was still kind of a little bitter on it. And I think ethically for me, I like DIY hunters.
Yeah.
You've actually seen the only picture of an animal with me in my entire life is on the website. It's that caribou.
Yeah. You told us something crazy.
Yep.
That you're not a trophy hunter, which is not crazy. But the second part of that was that you said you don't take any horns out.
Nope. I've never carried a rack out in my life. Not one time, except for my wife's her first caribou. She carried it out. I did not. You can see mule deer here in the background, right?
Yeah.
So when I was almost 16, we were up above Grand Junction, Colorado, and I had a deer tag, and we were hunting elk, actually. And I came across a guy in the middle of a dirt road. I see this guy full draw with a bow. So we slow down, I shut everything down, and I don't know how long he was at draw for, but it was a long time, and he just lets down. And so I get out with my gun, because you could see the top of the rack over, like, kind of through his windshield. And I walk up, and I'm looking, and to me it's a mule deer, and it's legal, and I would like to shoot it. And so I'm like, are you going to shoot it? He goes, no, it's too small. I'm looking for something bigger. Well, I don't care.
Yeah.
So I'm like, do you care if I shoot it? And he goes, no. And so I shoot it. And as we're walking up, his heart sank. And most guys will measure mule deer based off of ears and G2s. Okay?
Okay.
Imagine a mule deer that had oversized ears for a mule deer anyway. So this mule deer ends up having 22-inch G2s and is 37.5 wide.
Oh, yeah, it must have been like Dumbo ears.
Oh, they were astronomically, even for a mule deer, they were big ears. They looked like a mule. and so, I processed it, and I actually threw the cape and the head off. And my dad went and picked it up. And, he's like, do you want this? I was like, no. And so he takes it back, and unbeknownst to me, he had it mounted, shoulder mounted. Yep. And I didn't know about it for about 10 years.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I'm just not I'm not big on trophies. I probably should have been at some point. I've left some beautiful animals, when it comes to that. But
like I said, you're a different kind of guy.
Meat for me is the landscape. I like to eat, I'll be honest.
Well, one of the things I love about the hunt that you guys transport people to is that it's mostly still DIY. You get them there, but the hunter, I still had to locate the caribou. I still had to, or the caribou had to locate us.
Yeah, right.
You just have to get lucky with caribou, but yeah, we still had to make it happen. It wasn't anybody sitting next to me being like, okay, if we go over this hill, they're going to be there.
Right.
It was still, I had to do the work. We had to do the work. We had the full experience. Most people don't raft out, to my knowledge, like we did. But man, just that whole trip was so fun.
To this date, you are our first and only people that have rafted out.
It was awesome.
It was, and it worked out. It worked out really well that week because there weren't a lot of people on the river yet. Well, and I can't remember, was it day 2 or 3?
It's like the second day.
Yeah, you'd reached me and you're like, okay, we've killed our caribou. And I was like, what? Already?
Yeah.
And then I think you took another day and you're like, okay, well, we're going to raft out.
First shot to the third shot was 14 hours.
Wow. Yeah, that was fast. And I was like, okay. And then I remember you were coming down. I think we'd reached, and I said, look, there's a lot of caribou. And I was up and down the river.
Yeah.
Because Chandler was still trying to bow hunt one, but that turned into a show because you couldn't release an arrow. There were like 500 caribou.
There's too many to hunt. Absolutely.
Yep. And then you pulled up there on the bank, and I was like, oh, you're going to see some stuff now. Like, it was just an onslaught of caribou. And then, yeah, it turned out to be really good. I'm glad you guys came out with this, and it worked out in that fashion. And for your first trip, I would say you definitely bit off probably as much as anybody would ever. The driving of the haul road alone.
It's a beast.
Yeah.
It's a beast.
Like this year, you would have had a whole lot of fun. It rained for almost a month in August. So the road you were on was nice. It was no longer nice this year. It was back to the way it was 20 years ago.
Oh,
where you
really?
got like 18, 20 inches of mud, like on Adigan Pass. And
Yeah.
You're in 4-wheel drive trying to grind
That's
it
the
out.
pass that goes over the brooks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a great time, and I'm glad you came back. And then Casey and Hush came back this year, and they had a good time. They were, Casey got his caribou, and then they got another really nice bull up there, and the muskox, and they got to see some things that most people wish they could see, like the wolf. The wolf alone was impressive.
Yeah.
So
I think he's got a story about that on their video. Their video from that hunt was pretty solid.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny that the way that he takes video, and I'm not a video guy. So I see your guys' cameras, and they're just these
Like, what is that?
Right, these amazing, like, fancy, I grew up with the old, had to go on your shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
And the power pack
It's like a
camera.
boom box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he's just
On
sitting
a
here.
tape.
Yeah, and he's just sitting here with this, like, looks like a digital camera. And then, you see the image, and I'm like, God, that's the clearest thing I've ever seen. Like, how'd you, even through the window?
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, they had a great time. And a little bit of delay there with the boat. We had a boat sink. Like I said, if you're not sinking a boat, we had the poly come off the bottom, actually. Nothing that the boat did or I did, just the poly peeled, and we came to a dead stop. And
Casey was like, dude, you won't believe it. We had to wait a couple days because Hook had a boat problem. I'm like, well, what was the problem? He's like, he lost it. I'm like, he just turned around and it was gone. He's like, no, it sunk.
Yeah, it sunk right there at the mouth of the Ivy Shack, right before.
And that's what you told us. And part of your safety talk was like, hey, this is not a slam dunk. You hold on.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing is not the safest thing.
No, I mean you're going 30 miles an hour in 2 inches of water sometimes.
Yeah.
The idea is that I've gone up and down that river so much, my brain hurts.
Right.
I actually did it in the dark this year, without lights, somewhat on purpose. So when we got the Redboat running, finally we had an all women's veterans hunting organization come up this year, and I was still trying to fine tune the Redboats distributor, and so
Which is the replacement boat.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I finally got it tuned, and it's, I don't know, 8. It's like 8 at night. And then out of nowhere, I see the fog bank. And if you've never seen the fog in Prudhoe, it's horrid. You can't drive in it. You can't do anything in it. And it likes to roll off the ocean. So you're racing this fog.
Right.
And so I put the girls on there, and we head up, and then the wind died, and the moon's reflection on the mountains, it made everything like silver.
Okay.
And I could see. And so I just shut the lights off, and we had just the calmest ride I think I've ever had in an airboat. I get them dumped off, and then naturally I'm thinking I could beat the fog back, and I could not. So I spent the night on the river in the airboat.
No way.
Yeah.
Just parked it and.
Yep. There's nothing you can do because you have to be able to see the water to run one.
Sure.
And you couldn't see. I couldn't see from me to you.
That's scary.
It's not the first time I've had to do it from fog. I try to avoid it as much as possible. But I really, really wanted to get them up river to complete their hunt. And they had Amanda shot probably one of the biggest caribou I've ever seen and the nicest. The bezzes on him were almost 30 inches long.
What?
Yeah, double shoveled, just absolute monster. And she shot him at like 660 yards. And the other one they shot was like 550. And they had a bear encounter, not like a purposeful bear encounter.
Right.
But there'd been a big male running around up there this year that was just not behaving like a typical northern brown bear. Definitely hungry, definitely looking. And they happened to pop up on him. And then he got downwind of them, which was not unusual, but typically they run from humans up there.
Right.
Bears don't like people up there. And so they came back, and then he was gone the next day. But
there's not a lot of people to encounter if you're a bear.
No, and they just really don't like people. They have a hard enough life without having any confrontations with anything. So,
Crazy. Well, I think that if somebody's looking to go with you guys or another transporter on an airboat, I think you just have to understand that just because you booked a time, you might not go on said time. I think Casey had to wait a couple days for the boat, the new boat to come in, and it's part of it. Like here in the lower 48, we're kind of spoiled. You know, if we want something, if we have to get it on 2-day prime, like that's waiting.
Right, right. You don't just drive down to the local dealer.
Yeah, I mean we're a day's drive from anything where you are.
Yeah,
if you're lucky, and limited supply at that day's drive.
Right.
It's not like there's a plethora of whatever you're looking for. The distributor cap that you need for your boat.
Yeah, and that was the killer was that cap. 3 caps later, they finally figured out something that would work. That was being airflown, right? And if you don't know anything about Alaska Air, they have what's called Gold Streak. Unbeknownst to us, Gold Streak can be bumped for priority mail, even though you pay more for Gold Streak. So it should have flown out one day, was 2 days late. and you just, it's kind of this cascade effect. It goes, but no, they hung out at camp for a couple of days there, and they got to film a bow hunt.
Yeah, did some fishing.
Yeah, lots of fishing and some hiking, and they did some podcasts, and then when it was time to go, we went, and then it worked out though. Had we gone any sooner, you wouldn't have got to see a wolf.
Yeah, so, it's pretty cool.
Yep.
I know we're planning on going back, but if somebody is looking to book with you, I know you guys get pretty full already, but how could they find out more info?
The best way to do it is to go to deadhorseoutfitters.com.
Okay.
We have our website there. Everything is on the website. Obviously, if you have any more questions, just call the number on there and you'll get a hold of Jeremy. I don't have the phone directed to me because I'm either in a truck or where
you're usually not where the phone would work.
Yeah, we learned that the first year. And then, our website is really well done. He did a great job on it. All the information's on there that you could want, down to the tags and just about anything that you could think of. But you call Jeremy, and then the hunting dates for non-residents is August 1st to September 15th.
Yep.
So we were there the whole time. We run 8-day sets, so a Thursday to a Thursday or a Friday to a Friday. Typically, on a normal day, you will hunt the same day you fly in. That's how that works.
Nice.
We are currently booked through 2025.
It's not just you. I mean, I think there's one of the byproducts of COVID. It's good and bad, but there's more people hunting. There's more people thinking about where's my meat come from, and they're looking for more opportunities. I love this hunt specifically because there's not a lot of things I can hunt in August here.
Right. So we've got the August viability there. We do have a pretty extensive waiting list, and I encourage people to get on it because we worked with a deal where you could, if something happened, you have up to 3 years to rebook.
Oh,
and
perfect.
So we have cancellations every year.
Yeah, sure.
And then Jeremy just starts on that waiting list, and it's
something
really,
comes up.
Yep, it's a yes, no, or whatever. But it's worked out, and I never thought we'd get as big as we did. I'll be honest. I think the first year I was like, well, maybe we'll get to 20, 25 people.
Yeah,
that was my version in my head, and then I think we've got 5 airboats now and 2-3 trailers, and
it's awesome.
Yeah. So
yeah, you've got a full little city that you set up there at your transport camp where you're like, oh yeah, you want the vacuum sealer?
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, sweet. Yes, we do.
Yeah. Maybe we'll eventually get enough parts and pieces. I won't have to go find them. I'll get everything for every boat, and then
it's awesome.
So
well, we appreciate you coming in, visiting with us today, and thanks for coming in, man.
I had a wonderful time. This is a great facility. You guys are great. I couldn't say enough good things. It really is.
Likewise. Thanks, dude.
Yeah, absolutely.